Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Simisola. The dust raised over allegations made by former President Olusegun Obasanjo of salary fixing by members of the National Assembly is yet to settle, with many accusing the Godswill Akpabio-led legislative arm of government of undermining the roles of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. The former president made the comment while hosting 6 members of the House of Representatives led by Ugo Chinyere Ikenga at the Olusegun Obasanjo Library in Abeokuta on Friday, August 9. According to Obasanjo, the lawmakers collect 200 million naira each amid the current economic hardship in the country, calling the act as describing the act as immoral and unconstitutional. The former military general also alleged that the executive is fond of giving what does not belong to the legislative, which has never been rejected. Well, in swift response, the Senate has countered Obasanjo, describing his allegations as an attempt to crucify the legislature by centurions of political hypocrisy. The Senate spokesman, Yemi Adaramodu, clarified that the Senate not only receives the salary allocated to it by the Revenue Mobilization Commission in strict accordance with constitutional provisions, and that no senator has received any financial patronage from the presidency. Continuing, the Senate spokesman added that the Red Chamber challenges anyone with credible evidence to present contrary facts. Well, to discuss all of this, I have political affairs analyst Adewale Ajadi. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the program. Now, you listened to the allegations made by former President Obasanjo, which contradicts the mandate of the Revenue Mobilization Fiscal Allocation Commission, which the law authorizes to arrange public officers' salaries and compensations. But that is not the case, according to Obasanjo. What are your thoughts on this?
In a country as complex and as varied as Nigeria, you'll have a lot of opinions. And within our own tradition, when an elderly person speaks, you are expected to listen. Well, I can understand the concerns that drives the former president to say what he's saying, but without evidence of such a situation, that allegation is not sustainable. It is very clear that the allocations are determined by the Revenue Board. The salaries are determined, but there's a difference between the salaries and the allowances. And I think maybe it's that misunderstanding that is driving this position. But it is clear that the levels of salaries for the legislator are not determined by the legislator. I don't think that there's any evidence or even any suspicion that that's true. The other side of the equation is the allowances, where there is a lot of work to be done. And I think that if that's where his concerns are, that's a very credible area to be concerned about. The allowances that are given as a result of their positions as legislators, the allowance that are allocated to them for accommodation, the allowance that are allocated for them for their staff, the allowance that are accommodated for the expenses of different kinds. That is where the fat is, and that is where many of the problems manifest.
Now, you, just like others, have said there is no proof to confirm Obasanjo's claims. Now, how serious do you think this is? I mean, do you think that it warrants an investigation?
Well, I mean, if we are trying to save money, we should focus on where the problem is. I've mentioned one of the areas where the problems is fundamentally, where we can properly ensure accountability where there is none at the moment, which is the allocation of allowances to legislators. The fact that this area is never subject to a proper audit, where there's often no enough paper trail to follow, and there's no accountability in how the money is spent, which is basically the money of the people of this country, then that's where I would start. I wouldn't start with an area where there's really no issue per se. There's very little that can be done once the salaries are agreed by the right body under the Constitution, which is the case. What we need to focus on, firstly, is the allowance, as I suggested to you, and following how the allowance is spent, who is spent on, whether they're properly spent. If I spend allowance in my work, I have to give receipts. I have to have a paper trail. If they're not doing that, then there's a problem. The other part is with regards to constituency projects, which there's a lot of opaqueness in how those constituency projects are identified, in how they are allocated, in the tendering processes for those consistency projects, and what happens to the monies that are alleged to have been acquired during those consistency projects to the contractors. That area is also opaque. By the way, when you look at it, these are areas across the world where there are problems. So even if we kind of really want to be diligent about this and want to hold ourselves to account, we'll borrow the best standards. Even most of the parliaments in the world have shown that these are the areas where legislators abuse expenditure considerably. And the link between the legislature and the executives in the allocation of constituency projects is a real issue. Those are where the issues are. There's no point wasting money where there is no apparent issue, rather than the comment by someone who himself is a politician and who could be argued to be playing to the gallery. The thing about Nigeria is all of these people play to the gallery. They play to the gallery of public opinion. When they are not in power, everybody is suspicious. Even though if you raise suspicions when they were in power, you are considered to be a subversive and undermining the process of proper governance. So the reality is that we have to be intelligent about what we are going to listen to politicians say, whether the elder statesmen or current politicians. We have to be able to look at it with some sort of skepticism and follow this with proper interrogation of the facts.
All right, now, since he made the claims, the former president has been under fire from various quarters, from people who say his administration was equally corrupt and morally reprehensible, while he did little or nothing to the corrupt persons in his government. Now, one question being asked is, how justified is he to make this sort of claims?
Well, let's give him the benefit of doubt that reflections after one leaves office leads to wisdom of what's going on. Every one of us have done things, finish the thing, and then look back and then we could have done this better, we could have done this differently. It's not a big problem to have. And in a country like ours, you have to have different perspectives. That's his perspective. I just think the order of priority is wrong. The legislators can't speak really because they have exploited the fact that there is very little transparency and or I would argue opaqueness in the allocation of allowances in constituency projects. This has been raised many times. They know it. I mean, this is a fact. So because he might have chosen the wrong place to fight on does not mean there are no issues. And let's be honest, we are still fairly young as a democracy. There's always areas for improvement. But look, there are dangers here. And anybody who does not see these dangers, whether they're politicians or what did you call them, traditional rulers, they are heavily misguided. When people went on demonstration the past few weeks, whether you agree with them or not, there's a danger. There's a lot of young people that are disaffected by the processes. Now, we have one of the youngest populations in the world. Across the Sahel, we've seen what younger population leads to. It is extremely important that people stop these games with each other where something can be improved. They see it as a criticism of themselves. There are issues of improvement in the legislature. Let's make sure that we do it in such a way that is transparent and is open, and that nobody can exploit it by making false allegations. Let's develop the discipline of ensuring that our people understand what is going on, not create opaque systems. Let's ensure that our democracy is participatory, not speculative. And that does not give the legislator any basis other than reason to pause and think about what they are doing and what everybody is doing in our politics, period. Nobody in our politics at the moment can cover themselves and say they're saints of any kind. No one. No one. And if they do, let them prove it. So we need to make sure that our children and our children's children can't, I mean, it's never going to be perfect system. It's not going to be devoid of what we call corruption. There's going to be elements of that. But we need to make sure that there are checks and balances, and then there's transparency in all these processes. If there's none, we weaken democracy immensely, and eventually we make ways for dictators and all kinds of people to come into place because we are opaque in our system and we're not accountable to our people. So we shouldn't have this politics where if somebody raises a criticism and a perspective we don't like, we automatically attack their integrity and their personality. Let's attack the facts. Let's argue about the facts. Let's disagree about the facts, but not about our individuals. Chief Obasanjo has every right to raise his opinion, and if it's not true, then let's find out that it's not true. Let's find out by the facts, not by attacking his personality.
Finally, now let's talk about the Revenue Mobilization Fiscal Allocation Commission, while not debunking Obasanjo's allegations, but specifically stating that only the National Assembly Service Commission could provide or can provide details of the running costs enjoyed by the senators. What have you to say to this?
I don't think it automatically means that. The point is we made. If you want to review anything, review that process. That process is opaque. For people who are serving, you see, here's where the problem lies. We are constantly playing the game of being a representative democracy. And a representative democracy where less than 50% of the population votes is not really representative. Let's leave that aside, but that's a fact. So nobody is covered in glory because the registered voters that vote are a very small percentage of the potential registered voters. And so nobody is got the carte blanche to say, oh, we are democratic representatives in that sense. But having said that, let's accept it be that as may. Nothing stops us from being a participatory democracy that involves our people in the processes of governance to the point that they understand what is going on. And there's nobody, whether it's an ex-president or current president, that can confuse them, and they know where their rights are, they know how things are being done. There's nothing that stops that. We have all the technology to do that. We have all the platforms to do that. We have all the ways to engage people. We have town hall meetings. They have constituency meetings. We have a whole range of things we can do. We're not doing that. Do you see what I mean? So our challenge is very fundamental to the health of our democracy. Our challenge, manifested by the symptoms of what we're saying is opaque, is that we're not making our democracy participatory enough so that the people understand what their representatives are doing, how they're being paid, how they're using the funds from the federal government for their expenses, what expenses are being properly paid, what expenses are not being properly paid. And if we leave it to the evolution of circumstances, we all will regret it. We all will regret it. So it's better now when people are saying and asking these questions that we'll be open enough and transparent enough to answer those questions in a way that explains that this is our perspective, this is what is going on. This is the record. If I was in the assembly, which I'm not likely to ever be, but if I was in the assembly, I'd be asking for us to do proper regular audits of our expenditure, our expenses, to publish that regularly, to show what each constituency spend is, to show all of these things regularly at regular intervals, so that nobody can call and play to the gallery of the fact that these people are corrupt and all of that. And even that would not stop corruption completely, but it will create trust. We have a massive trust deficit between the electorate and the elected. And until that trust deficit is bridged, we're in serious problems. And it'll be easy to get people on the streets shouting this and that because you are not giving them the information for them to make informed judgment about. We have to change this very quickly.
Well, so far, the Senate has come out to defend itself against Obasanjo's claims and has challenged anyone with credible evidence to present contrary facts. Political affairs analyst Adewale Ajadi, thank you very much, sir, for sharing your thoughts on this. We'll go on a short break. The program will continue in a bit. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're still discussing the allegations made by former President Olusegun Obasanjo against lawmakers of fixing their own salaries and allowances. My second guest is legal practitioner Douglas Ogbankwa. Thank you for making time for us, sir. Now, is someone like former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who understands the intricacies of governance in Nigeria, makes such sensitive allegations that lawmakers fix their own salaries and allowances, do you agree that it shouldn't be treated with kids' gloves?
First of all, I want to say that the accusations made by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, it's something that invites a lot of scrutiny and appraisal of our system. You'll find that the chairman of Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission have come out to say that the salary of the senator is about 1.1 million naira, but they don't have the powers to fix their allowances. The senators themselves, they fix their allowances, and that for me is an aberration. Senators, the powers that they have, the powers of lawmaking, are not the powers to apportion emoluments to themselves. Nigeria is living in Nigeria right now is in a state of a lot of austerity. And it is important for our leaders to lead by example, by being austere in their expenses. You find, for example, very ludicrous and condemnable the situation of senators and House of Rep members approving cars worth about 160 million naira per either senator or House of Rep member, when Nigerians are going through a lot of austere, situation. So it's important that the Nigerian leadership leads by example. It is very at this point, it's opposite. And when I say this, I'm not saying it for only the lawmakers or the federal government, even for the state governments. If you see some of the convoy of some state governors, you are going to find it very, very funny. You see wastes of human and material resources. Vehicles that are not needed. You see them, they line up like 50 vehicles at the same time, going on a particular official assignment. And those vehicles, they use fuel. And what's even more damning in the whole scenario is the fact that some of the vehicles stay on till the VIPs come in for their official assignment, so that the AC will be on and cold for them not to feel hot. It's time they started putting up those vehicles while they are inside those ceremonies. Reason being that we have to start cutting costs. The luxury of Nigerian leaders is too much. It's gargantuan, it's humongous. For a society that is going through austerity, we need to cut for example, the House of Rep members that said they cut their salaries by 50%. We saw salaries of House of Rep members being posted online. Nothing of such ever took place. Nigeria's leaders must understand that the people that they lead are very important in the spectrum of leadership. You cannot lead yourself. Always have the people in mind, whatever you do. Be very, very concessious. You may not be, you be honest. One of the problems we have in this country is that those that run Nigeria, some, not all, some people that run Nigeria do not have Nigerian hearts. If you were to ask someone that wants to become a minister or that wants to be a senator or House of Rep member, ask him, why do you want to be in this situation? He may not be able to tell you what his mission or vision would be or what is his legislative agenda. And this also comes to the recruitment process of Nigerian leaders. It's high time we introduced independent candidature in our polity for people like us who may want to go to the National Assembly. So say, no, I want to run. Because right now, if you don't have 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, that's 100 million naira, 200 million, 300 million naira. You see, even the process of recruitment is even actually a simulation of corruption. We must look at these things. This is the greatest, perhaps, it is the greatest black country in the world, and perhaps one of the greatest countries in the world. We must look inwards, cut down our costs, regulate our resources, and redistribute them for people to grow. We have to look at the SMEs, people who are ready to do business. Nigerians are perhaps the most industrious people in the world. They are very resilient, they are perseverant, they are dogged. If you gave Nigeria a meter, it would create a mile for you. So government must harness the huge and varied human resources that this country have, and in doing so, they must cut down on their costs.
Well, as you just pointed out, that the lawmakers' action is an arbitration, you know, to fix their own allowances and salaries. Does this imply that there is no authority, none at all, that can act against this arbitration process?
Absolutely. The Constitution is very clear on the mandate of the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission. It is the body that is embodied, that is imbued with the powers to set remuneration, salaries, emoluments, annuities, pensions, and any other kind of benefit, financial benefit that may accrue to a public official. The senators setting some kind of allowances for themselves, which is done by way of appropriation, is illegal. You cannot be a judge in your own cause. Never that court not happens. Just like I'm working for you now, you now ask me to set my own salary. It's completely unacceptable. Whether the senators or the House of Representatives members. You have 109 senators, and we have 360 House of Representative members. In between all of them, there are less than 600. The amount of money that is budgeted for these less than 600 persons every year is more than what a lot of Nigerians get as their benefit in this country in that particular year. It is actually something we must look into. First of all, we have no business, as far as I'm concerned, having a bicameral legislature. Because of our history, the United Kingdom, which colonized us, they have a unicameral legislature. They actually have a bicameral. It actually seems like unicameral. Ghana has a unicameral legislature. You know, because in the United Kingdom, the House of Lords is almost like ceremonial. I don't even know if they take salaries. It is the House of Commons that is actually legislature. And in the House of Commons, that's where the Prime Minister comes from. We must need to cut our costs. Our presidential system is too expensive. Nigeria's presidential system is the most expensive in the world. A minister, we have SA Technica, SA Projects, SA Media, SA Domestic Affairs. The SA, we have PA. The PA, we have Secretary. Come on, man. It's becoming too much. And even the president of Nigeria, the governors, they should cut down on their aids. I also feel like in this time of austerity and in the time that Nigerians are calling for change, it does not resonate with the conscience of the nation and the aspiration of the people for you to still be making appointments at this time. Like I always said, I supported Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and I still support him today, but it doesn't stop me from saying the truth, from navigating the issues. I am not a zombie. I would say the way it is. I feel, quite frankly, that the president of the country, the governors of the state, and again, let us also look at these governors. Some of these governors just hide under the shadow of Nigeria, forgetting that Nigeria is a country that is made up of a federal government, 36 states, 774 local governments, and each state have their wards. Those wards have communities, those communities have villages, their villages have quarters, those quarters have families. We must look at it from this way. I must be very frank with you. There is no governor in Nigeria that have gotten what they are getting under President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. But it's also very, very ironic that most of these governors are now, they're not even, I even hear about changing money in Abuja. The money is changed and sent to a private account. We must look at these things holistically. We must hold the governors accountable. There are governors who get what's it called, FAC funds, federal allocation funds. They get derivation funds. They get refunds on subsidy. They get ecological funds. Sometimes they even go as far as borrowing the future of their states away by taking loans from multilateral organizations. Some of them will take loans from central commercial banks in Nigeria. So those loans have some dubious origins if you look at it very well. These monies we're talking about running into altogether in 36 states of Nigeria, trillions of naira. And if they want to set the narrative, they'll give the like as if the president, oh, I've even forgotten. Before now, they even go as far as dipping their hands into the finances of the local government under the so-called FAC. JAC, Joint State Allocation Committee, SAC. Then guess what? They even put their hands in the money of the judiciary. And again, guess what? They put their hands in the money of the legislature. I make bold to say, because I have, by the grace of God, I have a little knowledge of the Nigerian judiciary, and I run the vanguard for the independence of the Nigerian judiciary. I've also served the Nigerian Bar Association on multiple fronts, local, national, even at the continental level. I want to say this, that the Nigerian judiciary at all times generates more money. Like this, a state judiciary is likely going to generate more money than the state's internal revenue service.
Other legal practitioner, Mr. Douglas Obankwa, thank you very much for sharing your insights on this topic. That's all we have on this episode of the program. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.